Anyways, ladies and gentlemen, let's change it up. We have Thomas Sheridan on the line with us. He's an independent alternative artist, author, musician, public speaker, broadcaster, and a researcher currently based in the west of Ireland. And I don't have his website right here for some reason. So let's just bring Thomas on, and he can give us the website. Thomas, how are you doing?
Hi, guys. My website is www.thomassheridanarts.com. And that's really it. I can get everything from there.
Ah, very good, very good. Now, I hear that
I'm delighted to be here, by the way, because I've been listening to you guys over the years, so it's nice to actually talk to you.
Well,
really?
Thank you. I did not realize that.
That's great.
Fantastic.
Yeah, you did some great interviews with like Chris Everard and people like that in the past, so I was always paying attention.
Thank you.
Oh, well, thank you.
Chris actually does a show on our network every Sunday at noon Pacific time. So that was about 3 hours and 40 minutes ago. So, yeah, if you ever want to tune into that, too, I definitely recommend it. But tell us about this real quick before we jump into it. Tell us about your show, because I noticed that you were also doing a show prior to coming on.
I do a show at 7 to 9 GMT, so that'd be in the afternoon in the US. It's called The Velocity of Now, and it's basically my way of looking at the world through art and the changes we're going through, the manipulation. I've written a couple of books on psychopathology, and I used to be a Wall Street graphic designer and consultant, communications consultant, so I was aware of just how we're manipulated and just how the system works and how it works through the visual narrative and everything from marketing, communications, advertising. I was also a professional musician. So it's my way of conveying, this is what they're doing to us and this is the way out. And humor plays a big part in telling jokes and writing comedy sketches and stuff like that. My idea is okay, we've got this far, we've come to the fear porn. We know the world is run by psychopaths. We know the situation is like this. We can't be living incredibly negative about it. We have to actually continue on as human beings, because if we lose those aspects of our humanity, our ability to actually laugh in the face of adversity, and develop along with that an ability to see the world in a more kind of archetypal, poetical kind of way, well, we're winning, just because just because we have a difficult situation in front of us doesn't mean we have to lose our humanity.
Absolutely. Very well said. Hold right there. Quick break. Thomas Sheridan, ladies and gentlemen. And, of course, we have the third hour at truthfrequencyradio.com, which is virtually commercial-free. So we'll get into one more segment with Thomas here on GCN. Then we will get full into the information in the third hour. All right. Let's get back into it with Mr. Thomas Sheridan, thomassheridanarts.com, the website. And since we only have about 9 minutes, Thomas, I want to get into some info in the next hour. But right now, tell us a little bit about your artwork and some of your inspirations.
Well, that's a great question. Thanks for that. I've been painting on and off all my life and drawing, and it was always something that interested me. Never seriously. I never studied fine arts. I did study graphic design, which was a great help in understanding how color worked. My influences are quite varied, but I'd have to say a huge influence for me would be American painters, particularly painters like Edward Hopper and the Wyeths. And I love Gothic art, and I love anything like that. I love anything that has a dark. Now, when I say dark, I don't mean negative people think. I mean something that speaks to the undercurrent of the human condition, something that tells a story below the narrative, paintings that speak an artwork, and even I'll extend that to music and films, that have a narrative that's quite deep and quite telling of the human experience. So therefore, I'm not I'm quite different than what you'd have I'm not, a lot of people who paint what they call New Age or shamanic painting. They tend to be quite bright and out there. I do similar motifs and similar ideas. If people go to my website, they'll see my art. It is in those kinds of sort of, a lot of it is in that kind of transformative, esoteric way, but it tends to deal with slightly darker subjects. Slightly more kind of, shall we say, a depth that goes beyond the sort of, the comfort zone. I like because I'm a firm believer in the whole Carl Jung idea that in order to imagine beings of, you don't imagine beings of light by, thinking about the brightness. Sometimes you have to make the shadow bright, make the shadow visible in order to see where the light is. And I'm very interested in psychology, and I'm very interested in that idea of looking at that narrative, that, you know, the whole idea of the malediction and the benediction, of the kind of alchemical idea that you have to look at both sides, both the light and the shade, in order to understand where the roadmap lies ahead. So yeah, I've basically been very influenced by American painters, and also the romantic painters in England like William Blake and Samuel Palmer, who in their own time painted similar kind of ideas. Again, they were looking outside the human experience, not so much of the landscape of the real world, but the landscape of almost like the psychic world.
So how oh, excuse me. How does the inspiration hit? Do you get an emotion, a feeling within yourself, and then start to project that out onto the canvas? Or is it something perhaps that you might see that sparks emotion, which then translates into the paintings?
For me, it's mostly dreams. I'm a compulsive dream journalist, and I always have been for many years. And I find that dreams are probably the main, you know, along with like real life experiences, emotions that would actually affect you, being hurt, being sad, being happy. But I do, and I think it's something we should all do, is pay a very, very careful attention to our dreams. I keep a book beside my bed, and I get up in the morning, and even if the dream has no meaning or seems, I can barely recall the actual details, I always jot it down, because there's actually a predictive quality in dreams, whether people want to believe that or not. And many things that I've actually dreams about have come to pass in a greater level. I mean, I'm totally hooked up to the idea of Carl Jung's collective consciousness, that at some level we're all wired in. In fact, I found a dream journal from 2001. It was August 9th, and in the dream I was standing on a building in Manhattan that had been destroyed, and I was walking across girders. Now, I don't know if I was predicting the future, reading into the subconscious, but people start keeping dream journals, they'll discover that things like that actually appear before they happen in real life. I don't know whether we're actually seeing it or sensing it, or we're sensing some kind of changes in in kind of the human experience. It's about the effects of the consciousness. But that for me is the main thing. I pay very, very careful attentions to my dreams, and that's been a huge, and also music. Like I said, I used to be a professional musician, so I'm very aware of the power of music, and I'm very aware of the actual the synesthesia aspect of music that, you know, I think it was Jimi Hendrix used to say to the engineer, can you make it sound more purple, or can you make it sound more green? You know, that's what's called the blues or whatever. And those kinds of things interest me. Those kinds of things of garnishing, again, inspiration from like outside the obvious. And that would be it. But then again, there are days I'll see a beautiful sunset or a really nice, neat looking tree, and that kind of thing. That would do it for me, yeah. But I'd say it's mostly dreams.
Let me ask you something as an artist, and it may be a little bit different, because I imagine when you have a painting in mind, you can actually see the finished product, and then you're creating the finished product. In my case, it's music. So as I write the music, I'm writing it one note at a time, one line at a time. I don't see the finished product until it's finished. I don't even have a vision for the finished product. I just let the universe just take me in the flow, just take me wherever. However, I get tapped into some kind of frequency, and I can't explain it. And I can sit there for hours and hours and hours with no inspiration whatsoever, but it's just that 1 minute that comes in, and boom, all of a sudden I'm tapped in, and I'm just boom, 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 boom. I can't force it. It's nothing that I can bring on consciously. It's just I have to be at the right place at the right time in order for this inspiration to hit and to start writing like this. However, if there is an outside force that enters into that circle, it can, boom, disconnect me from that, and I can't get back to that place. So let me ask you this. Have you experienced anything like that? And if so, any thoughts on that?
Well, I always say that's the yardstick for being an artist. When people say they're not an artist, and then they go and describe what you've just said, they've tapped into the muse. They've dipped into that stream. They've captured a piece of the magic that's floating out there to be harnessed. Yes, absolutely. I mean, Mozart said that all the time when asked where did he get his music from. He said, I don't know. It's already there. I just pull it out of the sky. it's the same kind of thing. I mean, I don't know how a painting is going to finish. I mean, I write books that often deal with factual situations, and I don't know how they're going to go. I just like jump in there and see where it takes me. And the same with music as well. I mean, I can remember being in bands where we'd all change key at exactly the same moment on exactly the same measure. And that was not planned. That was some kind of, you'll see that jazz musicians who do that all the time. So yeah, that is it. Now, what you said about something comes in and breaks the circle, that's an interesting one, all right. I often think a lot of the disruption we have in our lives, advertising, crap music, just this whole thing that's imposed upon us from the sort of commercial world, from the exterior world, a lot of it seems to be designed to break that connection to the muse, to prevent us from doing that, to cause that disruption. It's almost like that severs the wires. And I always find that when it happens to me that way, it's usually an extraneous thing from outside myself, like a stupid problem or there's a bill to be paid or something like that. And you realize that if you didn't have those things bothering you, which we all have to, I suppose, we would be a very different species in many ways, because we could tap into this creative energy that you were just talking about there, Chris, and harvest it constantly. It is a magical thing, and you're right about that's a very good analogy used about the circle being broken, because it is magic. That's why magic was called the art, and that's the craft. And when the circle is broken, it's very difficult to reconnect it. And they're always trying to break our circles, I think.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. And I'm glad you said that, because I'm glad to know that it's not just me, because when it's broken, like I said, I could sit there for hours and hours and hours afterwards and just not get back to that place. And I don't know how to provoke it. It's just something throughout my entire life of writing music. It just happens whenever it feels like happening. But any thoughts on how to provoke it and reconnect to that?
Well, do you ever notice that when you're in the zone, when you touch the muse, if you do notice that time doesn't exist. You're outside the space-time parameter. 10 hours can go by. If you were working on a really cool piece of music and it was just coming together, you could be up all night to 4 or 5 in the morning and you wouldn't know that time had passed. That's it. It seems to be getting out of this trap that we're in, what I call the lords of perception who run this world, to get outside the measurement, that parameter they set for us in time and everything else. If you can get out of that, I think you're more likely to jump into the zone.
I never thought about it like that. And you're absolutely right, because I have sat in the studio for hours and hours and hours just writing away, and then before I know it, the sun's up. Anyways, ladies and gentlemen, unfortunately, the segment is over. So kiss the one you love right now. You never know when the last time it's going to be. If you want to head on over to truthfrequencyradio.com, join us for the extended hour of the broadcast. Special thanks to everybody. Special thanks to Bernard again for helping out with the network, and much more right here on Truth Frequency.
Thanks, guys.
All right, hour number 3 this Sunday, February 16th, 2014. We've got Thomas Sheridan on the line with us, and talking about art and music and creating and pulling energy out of this ether. Michael Jackson used to say that too. They used to ask him, how do you come up with these songs? He says, I don't know. I just grab them out of the ether. And that's very true. I mean, I think our essence goes into them, because I can't, at least I don't think I can, pull out a country music song out of the ether. Because it's not in my essence, but I can pull out, techno music or
hip-hop.
Conscious hip-hop that has some kind of meaning to it, which is something I'm working on right now. And I don't know where these lyrics are coming from, but I'm just sitting back and going, oh my God, wow. Yeah. I mean, this is, I'm not trying to talk myself up, but these are probably the best lyrics that I've written, including all of the Global Resistance albums. So I'm really just sitting back and going, yes, I'm back in music writing mode. So
I had a little sneak preview last night, and it's amazing, you guys. I can't wait till he releases it.
I was thinking I need to finish this one song and then release just the song, because if I try to wait to do a whole album, it's going to be 2018 before that happens.
Well, so maybe 2016.
Yeah. Anyways, we've got Thomas on the line with us. Thomas, anything you want to add to that? If not, I've got some questions for you about the Lords of Perception.
No, I think you nailed it good then. I think that was what you said was right. And what you're doing about releasing the first song beforehand, that's a good idea too, because what you're doing then is you've taken the energy, you've processed it, you've made a creative kind of child, and now you push it on. And then that often brings in room for the next one. So that would probably be a good idea.
I didn't even think about it like that.
Way,
because
like
I'm sitting on about 15 tracks that I've been working on for the past couple of years, and I just cannot finish any of them. I don't know why. I keep going. I'm an Aries, so I never want to finish anything anyways. I always want to start the project, but I never want to finish it. But, that's a good idea. Oh, okay. Very good. Let me ask you about the Lords of Perception, lifting the veil. I notice you have a lot of, celebrity pop culture stars here, and how there seems to be an agenda with all of this.
Well, I think a lot of people, even people that we would say are not woken up, are starting to realize that something just is not quite right with popular culture. I mean, you'll have people watching the Grammys or the MTV awards year after year, and they'll say, or even like in America, they have that Super Bowl halftime show thing, and they'll say, oh, it just gets more weird and more strange and more obnoxious every year. And they never stop to think why. Now, what's happening here is they're actually altering our consciousness. I'm completely convinced of that. They've changed music a lot. Now, I'm not talking about specifically the styles of music and how music has changed. That's a natural flux of things. We had punk, and then, we had goth, and then we had, the Manchester bands, and then we had grunge, and that always goes on, techno, hip hop. That always happens. It's not that. They're messing with frequencies. They're messing with key changes. They're messing with all kinds of tones and things like that in order to rattle us. That's the way I would put it. To literally rattle us, to make us feel unsettled and unstable and edgy. And a lot of that, I think, comes from my understanding and my own study into modern art. I came to the conclusion. Now, we all know, I know it's like this in every country. If you go into a public art gallery, you'll see stuff that is not art. It may be a trash can pushed over, or a bra with two balloons inside it, or just a canvas with a splash on the wall. And, all my life it's been like that. I mean, I'm a middle-aged guy now. It's been always like that since I was a kid anyway. And the art galleries never seemed to, and also the art colleges and the professors, never seemed to reflect what the taste of art was in the public, or even what the public were necessarily looking for. Doesn't mean the public are closed-minded. It just means it just did not reflect it. The context of the art became much more of an issue than the actual aesthetic. The quality of the art. That started about 100 years ago. And I was looking at this for a very long time, and then it dawned on me what was really going on. The sort of, what I would say, the annihilation of the aesthetic, the removal of the beauty from art, of the depth from art, began at the same time that advertising and color printing got really good. And if I had to put like a conspiracy kind of aspect on it, I would have to say it comes down to things like they were degenerating art in order to make advertising look better. When you'd walk out you go into an art gallery, it would often be a depressing experience of this conceptual art. I recently saw one that was bizarre. It was a woman dancing on butter. It means nothing. And then when you come outside and you would see an advertising billboard, it would look amazing. And that, I think, has a lot to do with it. I think the music is the same. They're degenerating the aesthetic of music for the same reason.
I never thought about it in that perspective, but you're absolutely right. And the advertisement, oh my God, I mean the mind control that people are subjected to. I can't help but think of those Axe commercials. I don't know if they have them up in your neck of the woods, but all these guys were running around buying this Axe product, which smells horrible.
Oh, it's awful.
I mean, it's disgusting. But the advertisement was that if you wear Axe, then women will like rush you. Just they're like they can't help themselves, and you see all these commercials of all these women like rushing this guy as soon as he sprays Axe on.
I've never seen that before in my life.
Oh, just doing that sold so many of these units. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, it's called Lynx here. I know the stuff. It's in a black container. And the ads are always like women chasing a guy down the street or coming out of sea to grab him in bikinis. It's ridiculous. The stuff works. People believe that stuff. And it does smell appalling as well. You're right.
Yes. Yeah.
It's awful. It's awful. And even women, you see the same thing happen to women when they get certain products at the store that will help them, smell better or look better. If it doesn't really even matter if it works or not. All they have to do is put a model up there who's probably using a completely different product anyway, that's saying that she used this product, and they'll go out and buy it. They don't even need to smell it or check it out or anything. They just buy it because that lady looks pretty wearing it.
Well, one funny thing I do is...
what about the big lips?
The big lips?
They get the injections of
collagen injections. Yeah, that's...
And it's like, what drug are you on that you think that makes you look attractive?
Right. Some of them take it too far. I mean, I can understand, people like me, I have really thin lips, so I'd like to have my lips plumped up a little bit.
You know what it is? It's poison. It's like frog poison or something like that. Or blowfish poison.
It's a poison. Isn't it Botox?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a swelling and it's a reaction that you have. Right.
I'm not going to do that to my body just so I can have a little bit more beauty. No.
I had it done on my belly. Just a joke.
Aw.
But
you look cute.
Aw, thank you. But it is a very crazy and sinister world we live in. One thing that I do is that I refuse to wear anything with a brand, especially on the T-shirt. On the jeans, yeah, maybe, because I can hide it. But on the T-shirt, no way. The way I see it, that if they want to advertise on me, they have to pay me, not the other way around. I'm not going to pay outrageous prices so I can advertise for them. And that's essentially what they have people doing, is walking around with these branded shirts and going, oh, look, Nike, just do this. And they're advertising the product.
Yeah, it's like the guys who do cycling in the Tour de France, so they have the ad for the motor racing guys with the ads all over them. You see guys walking down the street like that now. It's like, what drug are you on? Another reason you have to be careful of that stuff as well is a lot of those logos, I can tell you for a fact, they're actually sigils. They're actually sigils designed, a magical sigil to actually design to actually get you to buy the product. And so you're actually walking down the street as almost like a magician for the major corporations, because they're the ones who actually have taken control of these kinds of ideas now. And they're crudely shoving it in our face in terms of, as logos and things like that.
I'm familiar with the term sigil, but for the audience that isn't, can you elaborate a little bit on what that is?
In ritual magic, the idea of a sigil is to create an absolute change in consciousness where you get something you want. So basically the crude version of it is to actually write down what you have, what you want. So say you want $1,000. You don't write down, I wish I had $1,000. You write down, I have $1,000. And then you would remove the vowels first of all, then remove the repeating letters, and then you begin to join them up. You try to do your best to make them look attractive and into an interesting shape. And from that, the theory goes that you will get this. You will actually change consciousness. Now, there's two schools of thought here. One that it actually goes into the collective consciousness and does this stuff. The second school of thought is that you actually are changing your own consciousness because you're actually changing your version of the five sense reality because you're concentrating specifically on that goal. And corporations, a lot of those, the McDonald's logo is definitely one, and a few others are too. I think the Exxon logo is definitely one also. I don't think that was actually an E in there. I think that was an epsilon, the Greek letter. And they do this. They know about these things. These guys, these lords of perceptions, these very clever people at the top of these advertising agencies, they're schooled in this stuff. That's a myth that they don't know about these things. They absolutely do. And they know about the esoteric symbols, and they know about alchemy, and they know about how consciousness is changed according to certain colors, shapes, and everything like that. And so they create these sigils in the form of corporate logos. You see so many of them are repeating shapes. They're things like triangles and annoying them. Now, a lot of that comes from an idea of a thing called a phosphene. A phosphene is a neurological form constant that exists in your human brain. They're actually shapes you will see without actually even light. Now, they're also called the prisoner cinema, and that's what, because prisoners used to see these things in the dark when they were kept in solitary confinement. These logos and these sigils that these corporations get, they're designed to target your consciousness, to actually go and make you buy these things. And that's why you have to ask yourself, why so corporations who sell things that aren't particularly desirable, why they sell in vast numbers. And a lot of it has to do, they actually put a spell on us. We're actually, people who listen to this and say, oh, there's no such thing as magic, it doesn't exist. Well, you may not believe it, but these guys do. These guys believe it. Not only do they believe it, they're actually using it.
Right. Mm-hmm. Very well said. And I didn't know that the prisoners in solitary were also seeing these symbols. Can you elaborate a little more on that phenomenon?
Yeah, the word phosphene, P-H-O-S-P-H-E-N-E. I go in depth into it in my last book, The Anvil of the Psyche. But really what it is that they discovered, it's been known for a long time, that when human beings are kept in darkness, for a long time now, you will start seeing shapes, or if you have a blow on the head, and the shapes are always the same. They're a triangle, they're a sort of an oval shape on its side, so it's sort of like an eyeball. Things like the swastika might appear. Things like the Celtic spiral is a very common one, and the Celtic cross, and they're in there. And what happened? The brain seems to generate them without any light. That's what phosphene means in Greek, without light. And the brain generates them without any light. They're just generated, and they're not even generated in the optical cortex of the brain, which is interesting. They're somewhere in the limbic regions of the brain. And what happens is they're so deeply embedded into us as human beings at that sort of archetypal subconscious level that when these things were first discovered was by people kept in solitary. And what would happen was it was called the prisoner cinema later on, much later on, when they started to really investigate it, particularly in France at the turn of the century, and when they started to look and find that the shapes were the same. And you will see these things after a while. You'll also see them if you have an accident sometimes, like when you bang your head or playing sports or something, or someone gives you a punch. And they always say, I saw seeing stars. That's what the stars are. The 5-pointed star is actually one of the neurological form constants, the phosphenes. And so that's where that comes from. And so those things are deeply embedded into us. Those shapes are in there. They're part of our humanity. And these corporations, especially at the turn of the century, when this information was coming out, they started to design. If you look at logos at the turn of the century, they don't look like the ones today. You didn't have triangles, you didn't have these spirals, you didn't have the eye, what they call the all-seeing eye. Now they all, or the chevrons, another common one you see today. Now they all have these shapes, and they all have these shapes because these things work. They burrow into our unconsciousness, and we're attracted to them. And it also ties in with the actual ritual magic idea as well, because if you look at books like the Goetia and the Lesser Key of Solomon, they talk about certain shapes attracting people and demons and the worst aspects of a human being. So things like greed, want, desire, envy, that these shapes would attract them, and they would associate them in an archetypal form with a demon. And yes, so 2,000 years ago, they knew that certain shapes would bring out this sort of like the primal impulses in people, and that's what our modern corporate logos are.
Wow. I did not know that. I knew the sigils, but I didn't know that you could see them when you're deprived of light, that this is something that the mind creates. Now, and I know you can only speculate on this, and I dread to think about the speculation here, but how do you think these people come across these symbols? I mean, do they have subjects that are deprived in this kind of way to pull this kind of information out?
Probably, yeah. Or they probably just have people in prison, and some scientist or some psychologist 100 years ago. In fact, I'm pretty sure that's what happened. Interviewed them, and they said, "Excuse me, tell me what the shapes are like." And he would draw the shapes on a piece of paper, and then you go, "That's very interesting. That's a 5-pointed star. Why is that appearing in all these people's minds when they're in the dark?" And the next thing you know, where's the 5-pointed star then? On U.S. military, on Soviet military, and Chinese military, on the European Union flag, on the American flag. They don't come out of nowhere. They actually don't. They don't pick those shapes because they're pretty. They pick those shapes because they affect us.
How does the five-pointed star affect? In my opinion, when I see a five-pointed star, I think of protection. The Wiccan interpretation of it. The upside down, of course, I think of a Baphomet or something sinister. But how would you say that particular symbol affects us?
Well, because it's buried into our brain, and it's something. Who knows? Who knows the reason why we have that in our brain, instinctually and innately? Why that's in there? Who knows? But it's in there. And you could speculate that there's actually a mystical or a spiritual or a consciousness aspect to it. I don't know. Maybe, as the Muslim friends of mine say, that the jinn, the Islamic kind of demon, they're actually in our brains putting these things in there, and that's why they don't use graphics and drawings. Well, ironically, they do use the star in Islam, well, in the political form anyway. And so it's interesting. It really is interesting. Who knows why they're in there? It's one of those great mysteries.
Well, not necessarily the why, but the how. Any insight on how that particular symbol would affect the mind?
Yeah, well, they're on cave walls. If you go down to the south of France to Lacau and these Neolithic and Paleolithic cave walls, they're actually on the walls. The five-pointed star, the Celtic spiral, the Celtic cross, the all-seeing eye. Our ancient ancestors 50, 60,000 years ago were drawing these things on the wall in red ochre and soot from a fire.
Oh, no. Thomas, what I'm getting at, though, is what exactly does it do to the brain? Like, what type of reaction are they trying to provoke?
Okay. It attracts us. It's like a moth to a flame. We're attracted to it. That's basically what it is. It pulls us in, and certain shapes may actually create elements of desires. So, something like, say, a triangle might bring out the desire to actually want something, to own something. So therefore, you'd have companies that are selling things will use a triangle. That kind of thing. Or it might actually deal with insecurities. So it might make you fearful. And so a certain shape might make you fearful. An insurance company will use that in order to get you to buy insurance. These are very clever people we're dealing with. They're literally magicians. They really are.
Ah, okay. That makes sense. Can you break down the McDonald's logo for us?
Well, I've been looking at that for a while, and I'm, the obvious thing is the letter M, and you have the color red, and the color red represents, blood and eat food and survival, and that the life force, and there's a yellow band around the outside. And to me, I don't know whether it says meat or eat. It's something like that. But they've broken up some word, rearranged it, and put it on, and they've also put it on that long pole, right? Now, I don't mean to be sacrilegious here if there's any Christians listening, but that's actually why it's on that long pole the way it looks like it does, is because it doesn't look a million miles from a crucifix. Because they're playing on all the archetypes that are buried into our subconscious and bring out all these sort of emotional feelings in us. I think it says in English, eat. I think that's what it says in some kind of sigil form, but it's something like that. And you see it, it's just like the Pavlovian condition. You see that logo, you salivate, and then you go on McDonald's.
Eat, vomit, and be bloated.
Yeah. And have your gender changed by all the soy.
Oh, I know. It is ridiculous. How are the GMOs up in your neck of the woods? Is it as bad as it is here in the States?
No, it's not as bad in terms of things like bovine growth hormones. They're banned in this part of the world. So far, GMOs, not too bad, but it's creeping in. I mean, I live in the countryside and there's a farmer's co-op nearby, and I'm noticing the Monsanto logo on trucks being delivered more and more. So the enemy is encroaching, shall we say. And unfortunately, I was talking about that on my radio show tonight. The United States is always the one they attack first. And that's always like, what happens in the US will spread everywhere. Like, you guys got aspartame first, you guys got fluoridated first, and eventually comes everywhere else. But they seem to use the US as the test ground for big pharma and for things like, these food and nutrition, if you can call it food and nutrition.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. What about the vaccine agenda? Here, they're really trying to push the mandatory vaccines. and they're convincing a lot of people that vaccines are already mandatory, and they're really ostracizing and ridiculing any of the mothers who choose to not vaccinate their children. And there seems to be a group of people that go around and, oh, how stupid you are for not vaccinating. We're the smart ones because we vaccinate. Sheree was telling me about a comment the other day. Somebody said that all the non-vaccinated people should be shipped off to an island and killed, or be killed by each other or whatever. So the smart, educated, non-vaccinated, the smart, educated, vaccinated people can continue to live safely here.
Incredible, isn't it? I mean, I've seen those kind of comments myself. Yeah, it's the same here. The vaccine thing is one thing here they've really pushed. I mean, school districts are doing the same. Letters are being sent. Your kid won't be accepted to this school, that school, unless they've had all their inoculations. And it's a big pharma thing. I mean, in Ireland here, especially the biotech industry and big pharma and medications are big industries here. And, you know, we make a lot of the stuff here. Well, I don't, but I mean, there's a lot of those kind of plants here, and they export it. It's a big industry here. And so the government are told by the big pharma companies here, hey, do what we say, or we'll ship our big pharma factory to Poland. There's a lot of that kind of thing goes on. But yeah, it's really bad. It's the same thing. That doesn't make any sense what those guys said about ship the non-vaccinated people, because if you really think about it, if vaccines work, why would an unvaccinated person be a danger to a person who's vaccinated?
Well, not just that, but the people who are vaccinated are the ones that are carrying around the viruses because they're having live viruses injected into them.
Exactly. I know the world is upside down. It's crazy. I mean, again, it's just these inoculations are an excuse to sell products, to sell marketing, to put fear into people and sell them these elixirs. It's snake oil still exists. It just exists at a level where it has marketing and communications executives and all these kinds of things and big budgets of advertising and government lobbying. But it's the same thing. It's no different than the guy who went around the Wild West with his elixir that could cure any ailment under the sun. Those guys still exist. They just are CEOs of massive corporations now.
Right. We've got about 3 minutes until we hit the break. So I don't want to open up any big topics until then. But what we've been talking about is really fascinating. The sigils to the vaccines to the GMOs, and it's very clear that these all tie together. I mean, you can even look at the names of the medications, and each medication itself is a sigil that makes you want to take a certain type of medication.
Oh, yeah. Big time. The corporate logos relating to big pharma and biotech companies are very, very interesting. Like the biggest biotech company here in Ireland is called Abbott. And Abbott is in what you would, now these guys are a big, big company, and these guys make these biotech products. And Abbott is somebody in a monastery who actually provides counsel. He provides comfort. He provides like wisdom. He's the abbot. And that's the company uses that name and to imply the same kind of concept, the same kind of idea. You get so much of that as drugs, and like the SSRIs and the ones like Effexor. It sounds like it will affect you in a good way, and you must take it. Mm-hmm. And or suggest actually as it happened. My friend Kevin Miller, who made the film Generation RX, has studied this stuff for years, and what we're up against with these people is quite frightening, because they're almost like a different species at some levels. The people who run at the very top of these companies, they don't care if they poison and kill the entire human race. Once they're still getting their massive salary packages and enjoying their power, it's a psychopathic situation, absolutely. Once they're at the top of it, they do not care. I mean, if you look at the American Medical Association's, the Diagnostic and Statistics Manual, these are 70 people, and most of them are biotech and big pharma people who sit behind closed doors in a room every so often, and they invent new diseases to sell these new drugs they've invented for. So they don't actually invent drugs for diseases. They invent, diseases, drugs that can fix diseases. They invent the drug, and then they invent usually a fake neurological or psychiatric condition to market the drug at. These guys meet behind closed doors. They sign a non-binding agreement, and we're totally at their mercy.
Mm-hmm.
Very well said. We'll be right back. Final long segment on the other side with Thomas. All right, we are back. Final segment with Thomas Sheridan, and Wow. I mean, we're really getting into some pretty deep topics here. Social manipulation through popular culture, marketing, sigils, magic, mind control, which is ultimately what we're talking about. It's controlling you without your knowledge. And then you just start to become like a robot, like a sheep that just follows. That you have all these signals sent to your brain, and then you just react to these signals to advertisement. Now, let me ask you, Thomas, can you give us a couple of more examples, like the McDonald's sigil, or maybe some of the advertising vessels out there that people can be aware of?
Sure. There's lots of, it's all around us all the time. And there's always a historical precedence to these things. But one of the things you should look for in a lot of logos is the color red. The use of the color red is an important one, because red literally is, you'll hear people in the kind of new age world talk about low vibration or high vibration. Red literally is like that. I forget what the actual frequency number is, but it's at the lower end of the spectrum, and it literally does vibrate at a lower level. Now, when the color red is used, and this is why it's used in a lot of empires and royalty. You'll see like the Soviet Union used it, the Nazis used it, the Chinese Red Army used it, the British Empire used it, royalty used it. The color red, when we see that, we have a reaction. And we have a reaction that's actually, now you may not feel it. It doesn't matter that you don't feel it personally on the surface. You have we've all have a subconscious world below that reacts very differently. And I could talk about how that actually works later. But what happens is it triggers parts of our brains that actually puts us into a more kind of, shall we say, feral state. So you see the color red, it triggers the idea of blood, action, bang. What happens then is it literally fires a hormone in our lower brainstem called norepinephrine, and it floods up the lower brainstem with melanin, which is the color blue, and also norepinephrine, which is a stress hormone that is fired out of these very primitive neurotransmitters in the base of our brain, in a part of the human brain called the reptilian complex, the OR complex. It's the part of the brain uniquely concerned with fight or flight, sexual activity in order to pass on the genes, and so on. So when you see a logo that's overly red, or any kind of imperial regalia, military regalia, it fires the norepinephrine in the lower brainstem. This is why you always have this wide-eyed response, because what happens is, you'll often see when you actually look at these people, and if you show them, say, put them in a room and show them a series of colors, when you show them the red, their eyes will often, their pupils will dilate. And why that is because the optical cortex at the back of the brain gets flooded with norepinephrine, and it literally charges the optic nerves. And what happens is you're having the same response as a feral animal in the woods who's salivating at the sight of blood, either for food or for flight. And so that's a very good one to look at, an overuse of the color red, because they know they're targeting primitive parts of our neurology to get below the human and get to the animal. And you'll even hear it, like there was even people like Edward Bernays used to say things when neuroscience, he started off very early back at the turn of the century, but he took his uncle Sigmund Freud's work from Europe, over to the United States in order to get the United States into World War I. But he also got women smoking through, because he actually did the advertisements for Philip Morris. But this guy was a genius, a dark magician genius, if you really want to put down to it. But as neurology developed, he actually, came up to understand how the brain worked, and as they actually started to understand our brain partitions, and he was saying things like, I just want to get straight to the reptile. We want to sell products, we have to get straight to the reptile. And that was the kind of mantras they were using.
Wow. Straight to the reptile, straight to the reptilian brain.
Yeah.
Wow, absolutely amazing.
Fire those primitive urges,
Wow.
Wow. I'm just thinking back now on all the advertisements and everything I've seen growing up, and how that's affected different choices and decisions that I've made earlier in my life. Now that we're aware of them, of course, we can combat them. But when we're not aware of them, they are very, very effective.
Oh, they're deadly. They can make you go to war for something that you don't believe in, but you're actually being brainwashed into. They can, that's what they'll do. If you look at the Nazi rallies, like the Nuremberg rallies, and the proliferation of the color red in those regimented flags. I mean, thousands and thousands of them. And all those people that were there, those guys that were there in 1934 and 35, they were all the SS later on, and they were just robots. Those guys were just like, they were literally programmed, because the National Socialists had years to program them. And they began by like hypnotizing and spellbinding with that red flag. And the same with the Soviet Union. You would have these massive marches where? In Red Square. The Chinese Red Army, it goes on and on and on. And, they knew about this stuff, and that, the red carpet's another giveaway as well. Like when you see celebrities walking down the red carpet, that began with royalty. That was actually a line. Now, there's two theories there. And I think they're both right. One is that represents a bloodline in royalty. Yeah, that's probably true. But the fact they use it for celebrities is to show you that these celebrities walking down that red carpet, they're your predators. You're their prey. And they're preying on your subconscious, and you must be subservient and submissive to them. It doesn't matter if they've no talent. The fact they're on that red carpet, there's parts of your subconscious mind automatically assume that you are in a submissive position, you're a subordinate position to the individual on that red carpet.
Wow. Again, I never really thought about it in that perspective. Very eye-opening information.
That's crazy. Wow.
Yeah, I worked for Goldman Sachs as a communications consultant and a couple of other Wall Street banks and firms, and these guys know this stuff, and this is how I was schooled. This is how I was trained, and this is what they know, and this is how they use us. And like you said, when we don't know about this stuff, we are lambs to the slaughter. That's why in my 3 books, Puzzling People, Defeat the Demons, and Anvil of the Psyche, I've gone out of my way to look, people, you have to build a firewall around your psyche. It's as simple as that. Otherwise, you are their food.
Wow.
Right.
What about the colors green and blue? I know those are used to calm people, aren't they?
Yeah, pregnancy, they're used in anything green. Green and blue trigger the hormone oxytocin, predominantly in women, that create feelings of bonding and feelings of love. You'll often see pregnancy testing kits are often using those pastel blues or pastel greens. Mm-hmm. That's to generate the oxytocin flow in the brain, to generate a sense of bonding. So blue and green generates bonding.
Ah, okay.
So an affinity, green, spring, growth, blue, the same thing. So you would see a lot of corporations that target women's products, everything from feminine hygiene products to so on like that, to just even cosmetics. A lot of it is green and those blue colors.
I have noticed that, yes. That's so weird.
Let me ask you something, and maybe you don't have an answer to this, but as you're talking about sigils and colors and all of this, I can't help but think of some of the very crazy outfits that people like Lady Gaga, other performers wear. And I'm just wondering if any of that plays into any of the symbolism that affects the mind. Oh, gosh, yeah.
Lady Gaga if she's not heavily schooled in this stuff, well, then her handlers most certainly are. I mean, I know you've seen that picture of her where she had the dress made of human flesh. That was when I first saw that. Human flesh, cow flesh. that would have been a stretch too far. The picture of her wearing a cow flesh dress. That to me was what really made me notice her. And I watched some live performances, and they're unbelievably esoteric. She's basically Lilith or Hathor, the dead queen of the West. That's really what the archetype she's invoking. Now, she's almost like the male version, the female version of what the males were doing. The male version was Dionysus. That was the rock star. Mick Jagger, Eddie Vedder, you name it, Kurt Cobain. They were Dionysian characters. That was their archetype. But they've been a bit slow behind on the female development of that. And Madonna tapped into that a little bit. But who's ever behind Lady Gaga, these people have some serious esoteric and occult knowledge, if not herself. And the whole thing about her seems to be depth. That's what our stage show is. It's death. And it's death of and I say death, I don't literally mean physical death, end of life. I mean death like in the death card of the tarot, the destruction of the old ways and the building of a new kind of identity from the ruins of the old ways. So for instance, you'll see that a lot of our audience, there's almost like a genderless aspect to her. There's no rumors been sent out there that she actually is a man, that she actually has male genitalia, coupled with the fact that her audience seem to be a diverse kind of group of like male and female in the fact that, but they don't actually act like male and female. It almost becomes like they become a genderless whole. So they become an asexual. It's very alchemical, the idea of the actual, the hermaphroditic kind of rebirth there. And this way, it's clever marketing too, because if you can create a kind of a specific third gender, a sort of a middle gender, and again, these play on very dark, very deep archetypes inside us. You created a whole new demographic that you can sell to. This is why I honestly believe that there's the idea of they're actually trying to create a third gender between male and female, because they fully tapped the male, they fully tapped the female. What they can do now is create a third gender in the middle. And this and you see this where fashion shows and everything, where fashion models look less and less like women every year. They just don't look like females. They don't have hourglass figures and boobs, and they don't look like Marilyn Monroe. They're more the waif, the asexual, in the middle. So if you can create this kind of idea of a third gender that's actually not male, not female, you have a whole new demographic to sell to. And that's what I think that the actual purpose of Lady Gaga is about. And she pulls in the old kind of ideas of the Greek mystery plays and Hathor, as well as the alchemical things of the merging of the king and queen into the hermaphroditic, being in the center.
Again, I never really thought about that. I thought it was more of a situation where they were changing the gender roles in order to break down the family structure and also make men less aggressive and more passive and unwilling to fight for their family or themselves or anything that they're doing.
That's precisely correct. But at the same time, too, these guys are only interested in business more than anything else. And they want money, and they want your money. And so, yeah, that's true. That's absolutely true. That's all part of it. But the end game is finance, and the end game is to extract to create new demographics to market to and sell to. They've exhausted all the others. They have little girls actually buying women's clothes. That's why you see these things like the Bratz toys. They're like little, little kind of, burlesque dolls for little girls.
Right, you described it great. I was thinking slut, but no, you're right. That's exactly what it is. Little burlesque dolls for little girls. Yeah. I remember seeing them the first time and going, "Oh my God."
Yeah, that's okay for someone who's 19 or 18 or 19, but they're aiming them at like 4 and 5 year old girls.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the same thing too. And I agree with you. There's been the male is being destroyed in many ways. I mean, there is an element that the man is not allowed to be strong unless he's fighting for the country. You see, that's what I find very, very sinister about this. You're only allowed to be a male archetype if you have a machine gun in your hand and you're fighting to get NATO its oil. Otherwise, you're a thug and you're misogynist and you hate women. Have you noticed that? But once they need you for a war, then you can express your manhood. Then you can express your masculinity. Otherwise, you must be subservient. You must break down the family. You must be genderless. But when there's a war, we need to get some oil. Well, you better learn how to be a man. It's really horrible when you think about it.
Also, it does seem like a lot of the TV shows that are on the air right now portray the male as stupid and just a dumbass that needs to be talked down to by his wife, and kids even talk down to the father and speak up to the mother. It's really a weird dynamic going on unless the man is in the military. Like you said, unless he's G.I. Joe, he's an idiot.
He's an idiot. Homer Simpson. That was the classic.
Yep.
He was an ineffectual male. He was not a good father. He was a fool. He was almost like psychopathic at times in terms of his own childish infantilism. Right. He wasn't really, but that's what it was like. Mm-hmm. And who's the voice of reason in the family?
The mother.
Well, it's Lisa. No, Lisa.
Oh, Lisa. Girl. That's right. The little girl.
She doesn't look up to her father. She coaches him.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's not the way it's supposed to be. I mean, the family unit, I think, is the key here, and that's what's being destroyed is the family, because families aren't supposed to operate that way. If it operated that way, it would be so ass backwards that the government would have already taken over the country by now. They really would, because real families aren't designed to be that way, where the children are telling the parents what to do and all that.
Yeah, you're right though about taking over, because what happens is if they want to make children not be dependent on their parents for guidance. They want children being dependent on the state. This is why they move them into school younger and younger. Mm-hmm. This is why they want the mothers working. Now, if a woman wants to work, that's her own business. God bless her. Good luck to her. But I'm just saying that's the reason why they want the children being raised by the state, not by the family.
Wow. I mean, did you hear about what happened in this latest snowstorm that hit Atlanta? Not the ice storm a few days ago, but a couple weeks ago, they had a huge snowstorm, and they just were totally unprepared for it, quote unquote, and they kept the children at the school all night long. And they had a slumber party. I mean, I just thought to myself, oh my God, they just kept your children under the care of the state all night without your permission.
And those kids growing up, did their father come to rescue them? Did their mother come to rescue them? No. The government kept them alive.
The government saved them.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if they even told them, "Oh, your parents didn't want to risk getting in an accident to come and get you from the school," when the parents were freaking out the entire night.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And that's another aspect to it. It will create disruption to create fear.
There's also another game going on in the schools right now called Cross the Line, and they called these children up to the front, or they made them raise their hand if they had ever thought of cutting themselves, or if they had a family member who was an alcoholic, or a family member that had been in prison, or it was just this wide array of totally privacy invading questions that they were asking these kids. And if they didn't participate in it, then they got in-school suspension. That's
like George Orwell's Junior Spies in 1984. Spying your parents. That's exactly what that is. Have you heard about the genderless schools in Europe that are starting up that we have over here? Where you don't have boys and girls in the school identified by gender. They're called friends.
Oh my God. That's so unhealthy. And I'm not even saying that because I was raised very, very conservative Christian. And even without all of that religious upbringing, I would still think that's too much, because it's not healthy for children to be mixed in a group where you do have a little bit of sexual tension going on. Even with a 5 or 6 year old kid, they're still going to feel weird about taking their clothes off or going to the bathroom in front of a person of the opposite sex. That's just the way we're built. That's insane.
Yeah, they even have to wear yellow safety jackets and safety equipment when they play in the sandpit, because the sandpit is dangerous.
Oh my God.
Wow.
Oh yeah. Yeah, this is the Swedish socialist model that's like now been held up as, and even the Swedes don't even like it.
Yeah,
that's been held up as the model for European society going forward, and it'll get to you guys as well.
Well, it's already kind of starting. I mean, we've got kids over here, and I don't know what I think about this yet. I'm still mulling it over in my mind, whether I think it's right or not. But we've got kids over here who identify themselves as a different gender, and so they want the ability to go into the girls' bathroom, even if they're technically a boy, or vice versa. And I just wonder, is that healthy for the kids? Or is it a nice step to take in recognizing gender equality? Or, well, what do you think about this? Or transgender?
I think it's crazy, because they're telling children who don't even know that they're a boy or a girl to pick their gender.
Right.
I don't know if it was the Lego website or it was the Barbie website, but one of the websites, the kids can log in and it says, what's your age? And you can select an age from a drop down menu, and it goes as low as 5. And then you pick, are you a boy or a girl? And you click on that field, and the pop-out menu says boy, girl, not sure.
Not sure?
Yeah.
Oh my God. That's the saddest thing I've ever heard, a 5-year-old not knowing what they are.
Yeah.
You know, I think
Well,
there's a gender identity crisis going on.
Well, they're doing things like they're asking children now, do they want sex changes at earlier and earlier youngest age? I mean, yeah, I do believe that that there are people who are born the wrong gender. I do believe that there is, like, you can actually show that there are chromosome problems and stuff like that. And those people should be helped as adults. Mm-hmm. But what they're offering now is like gender changes as an option, if you just feel like it.
Yeah, that's not healthy. Because on some level you have to come to terms with who you are and who you were made as. And I think a lot of people that are transgendered, and I'm sorry to say this, but I feel like a lot of them are just have never been able to come to terms with who they were created to be. And so and they're so confused by society that they reach out for anything that they feel will make them feel normal, even if it doesn't in the end. But I know what you mean. I know there's a girl I grew up with that was born with a chromosomal abnormality, and they chose to. She was hermaphrodite, and they chose for her to be a girl. And later on, she got a sex change completely and went to being a boy because we all knew that she was supposed to be a boy. So
yeah, that's fair enough. That's okay. We should, those people should be taken care of and looked after.
Definitely.
We have a situation, like you said something there, it's almost like a spiritual crisis if you want to look on it that way. Because I remember I read something not too long ago about the men who had sex changes and became women. And it was interesting how so many of them had a major crisis in their lives. Mm-hmm. A lot of them had wives who died of cancer, that they were in their wives had died of cancer and they were very badly traumatized by it. Yeah. And that's never talked about, and that's an important thing because these men have probably never been ever able to express the sense of loss of losing their soulmate. And because of that, because of the way it is with men that way, that men are generally told, bottle up and here, have another beer, don't worry about it. That kind of thing. I don't know how it is in America, but that's how it is in Ireland. And a lot of these guys will go inside and, if you don't take care of that stuff on the outside, it will manifest and distort you on the inside. Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of that kind of thing goes on. Yeah,
I think so too. And they try to say this as an argument against gays all the time, but they try to say that gays are molested as children and that's why they're gay. It's not true in most of the gay cases, but with transgendered individuals, it really can be, especially if a child was sexually abused, by a member of the same sex growing up. They don't want to be what they were abused as. They want to switch over to something innocuous that they can control themselves.
Precisely, and I agree totally, and that's why we have to be very careful with this particular topic. We can't just jump into it like the same way it was just like you had like gay rights or lesbian rights. This is a very different thing because we're dealing with somebody who may need help in another way and may just need some kind of support, rather than saying, "Oh, they're transgender by choice. We must support their civil rights." No, you haven't addressed the underlying problem of a human soul that's damaged and needs help.
Right. And if that problem's not solved, then it's just going to go unsolved and those people are going to go on to, to not do well in life. And then the detractors from the transgender community will look at them and say, see, they don't end up well. Yeah. I know what you mean.
Yeah, exactly.
I know exactly what you mean. Yeah. It's interesting. Also, I've seen a lot of disturbing news coming out of Europe lately. Recently, didn't Belgium make it legal to euthanize children of any age?
Yeah, this is I even know I have friends who are. I'm a very liberal person myself, and I thought when I saw this, there's no age limit on euthanasia now in Belgium. So you could have parents who have kids who maybe have something like, I don't know, they're in a wheelchair, cerebral palsy, and you will have psychopathic individuals who'll have a kid with cerebral palsy or God knows what's wrong with them. And they'll try and encourage that kid to say, well, you'll never have a normal life, you might as well kill yourself. Right. And that's what and they will groom the child, just like a pedophile will groom a child to do what they want. A psychopathic parent who wants rid of a kid who's a handicapped will groom that child if the law is there to actually make the kid want to kill themselves. Exactly. And this is why this is a step too far with the law in Belgium.
Yeah, that's too much.
I don't know if it's going to go through now. There was a huge march, I think, yesterday. There was something like 500,000 people or something came out. So it's still all to play for. I think even in a very liberal place like Belgium, I think even that this might be a step too far.
Yeah, I think, and for most people, even if they are liberal and even if they do agree with abortion, for instance, they're not going to go for this because this is a human life that we're talking about, and children are not capable of making those kinds of decisions until they're in their 20s, I think. Oh, wow, we're at the end of the show.
Oh, that is it.
Oh, my God.
Give us the websites one more time, Thomas, please.
It's ThomasSheridanArts.com. Thank you very much, guys, for having me on. I really enjoyed that.
Oh, thank you very much for your time.
On.
It's been a fantastic show. Ladies and gentlemen, stay tuned. Dr. Brooks Agnew up next right here on the Truth Frequency Radio Network, X Squared Radio. So kiss the one you love right now. You never know when the last time is going to be. We'll see you every Saturday and Sunday right here on TruthFrequencyRadio.com.
Love you guys.
With the renegades, castaways, outlaws through the game like Thomas Paine was. They masquerade us. Who's to blame us now? Set to explode like a hand grenade does. No peace to seize the police to show peace. Unleash beef, no relief. Peace underneath the beast that lies dormant. Forced to use force, torture, use caution. Tossed to the ground, the subliminal blinded. Like KRS-One, cause I'm criminal minded. I run with soldiers amongst the vultures. Now you're under control.